Okay.
So yes, we are at the end of 4 weeks of CoArt that happened here in Menair at the Dorama House. First thing I think is quite interesting, why did we do it?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, I think it initially came out of a conversation that you and I had when I was trying to figure out what the house was closed during the confinement period, and I was thinking about how to reopen the residency and how to make it relevant. You know, I didn't think that we could just go back to the way things were before, and I thought there should be some way to mark this moment. And then I had a conversation with you, and I had a very good conversation with you, and that, for me, that's how it started, was this conversation about how did we move out of this moment, how do we mark that this moment has changed us?
Absolutely. This feeling that this is a very special moment in time, and there was this idea that there is a before and after,
right,
really brought us to this idea to say, okay, we are not in a situation that we can be analytical or have a bird's eye view. We are in the middle. So let's capture all these emotions and thinking and thoughts and ideas and creativity that's happening at that very moment. And that was the beginning of that idea process, yeah.
Right, when we met and talked a little bit further through, and we wanted to bring artists to the Artist in Residence program here in Dorma, and then we suddenly had a cook who wanted to participate, a vegan cook, Sean Moxie, who is quite known in Germany for his vegan inventions, and then we were talking about how do we do this and bring all these artists and what could it be, and then after a lot of coffee we came up with the idea to say, well, let's do this art table. Let's invite people to the table and let's talk, because we have been in confinement. We have been in confinement for several months with different intensity. In France, quite strict. Germany, a little bit more loose, yet still a confinement. And we didn't talk to people in person. We did video chats, we did email, we called each other and so forth, but we didn't come together and talked about our experience. So I think that was really kind of one of the key elements where we said, okay, we need to find a way where we can safely, with proper distance, outside, it's still Corona time, but it's not over yet. So how can we do this safely? And then we...
Yeah, and I think the first meal, one of the people I was sitting with, for her, it was really the first time to have a meal with a group of people for months. So she was really excited. It was really, you did feel like, you know, that was so last. She's like, I haven't actually really been out of my house and with people I don't know in months. So it did make a difference, you know, that one.
When we were thinking about the whole concept and how to do it, I think it was really interesting that every one of us three immediately had this feeling it would be too small if we just stayed in this house, or try to see what 3 or 4 artists are thinking, because it is bigger than us. So very soon we had this idea to have all these video interviews to bring the world to this house and to reflect how COVID-19 is interacting and impacting people in very different situations and living conditions. So we spoke to refugees in Syria and people in Brazil and India, Baghdad. So that really opened up the perspective and opened up all the discussions we had.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we brought basically more to the table, as we say, right? So our table suddenly became more than just eating together, it was working together, it was playing together, it was virtual connections, it was artists working here and working on artworks, reflecting on the situation, which we then kind of let spill over into an exhibition which we had downstairs. So suddenly we had this wonderful connection of 3 art table situation each Saturday. We had video interviews with everybody, not everybody, but all over the world, with a lot of people from all over the world. We had an exhibition space where artists were showing their work here in residence, but also other artists who we asked to contribute. and then...
Did you have a lot of public visiting? Because you were down in the gallery, and I'm wondering, I haven't actually talked to you about this, what kind of interaction you had with the public that would come into the space in the days when it was open?
It was quite it's quite diverse. Obviously, some people were just passing through because we didn't announce it for good reasons. We didn't want to have a gallery where we have hundreds of people going through, and so no publicity. Was just people walking by or people who heard about it from us, basically. So some of the people who walked by were really curious and interested because they told me that they never expected something like this. They were quite surprised about the exhibition setup itself because it was two-parted. One a thinking space, a little experimental, the other more a traditional gallery setting, but that combination in that first part of kind of a thinking space, it's something which I heard several times. It's not very common in France.
Yeah.
I think in Germany we are more used to that type of
laboratory
absolutely,
all the time, but I heard from a lot of people that they're not used to this and that they find this really interesting.
I mean, exactly that idea was one of the beauties of the art tables, that we said, okay, it's nice to sit down and eat, but for me it was much more like an ideation workshop we did with the people, where we went through different stages and ideas to activate their memory, for example, because people forgot how confinement felt. So we activated that. We collected words and impressions and videos of these people. So exactly this idea of creating and having a lab where all this is happening.
Right, the art tables were like a lab.
Yeah.
Was there anything that came out of the art tables that surprised you?
Yes, a lot. The interesting thing about the tablets was that it were like an incubator for discussions.
Right.
Suddenly people talked about topics that started with confinement and COVID were much bigger.
Much bigger, yeah.
Like in the last table at one table, suddenly there's this whole question, what is COVID-19 teaching us? Went in the direction of we must be greener, we must be healthier. The world is at a certain point where we have to take in consideration all these environmental topics. So it headed in that direction. But I remember the table before, we had all these big discussions about gender identity, self-expression, how important it is to find forms to do that even in confinement. So it was interesting, and that was a big surprise for me, that talking about confinement, the lockdown, the corona, was for so many parts of this whole extravaganza of 4 weeks a starting point to go much bigger and address much bigger ideas. That was amazing.
And that reflected in the video booth which we attached to it, where we did these kind of video. I think of it as a little confession, like in the Catholic Church, where you go to the priest and you confess. And so what we did is we had a bunch of questions handed out to people, and they could pick a question they like, or talk about something else. It didn't really matter, but it was we wanted them to talk about something that matters to them, a real question, something that is important and needs answers. And people went into these video booths and were so honest and direct and in the moment and present.
And kind of intimate, don't you feel?
Super intimate, yeah.
And I think that was probably the way it was set up. They were alone in the room. You know, there was you did it yourself, and so in a way that gave a kind of aspect that was really interesting. Not like you knew they were alone. Like as you watch them, you know they're alone. You know they're not being asked a question.
And they had time. I mean, it's really interesting that you see how this thinking process is happening, because nobody was saying, okay, now you're done, or you have to do it in 2 minutes or whatever. No, it was open space, and they could use it for 1 minute, for one word, or for 10 minutes. And some people really did, and going from one topic to another, while others concentrated on one. But absolutely right. I mean, this is also one of the experiences which made this CoArt so valuable and right, that in this moment where we are still very unsure what's happening, everything is very fluid, the thing we did was very fluid as well and flexible, so people really spoke from their heart. It's not that rational often, but it's so true and so authentic, and I really like that.
Unfiltered. The whole event was really unfiltered in a really good way.
Yeah, and uncertain. We didn't know what would happen.
Right.
each time.
I just spoke to Daria that somehow, as we all have no idea how this whole thing will evolve, it would be cool to have something like that in 1 year's time to see how these ideas and questions we had back then
have sharpened or changed or,
Exactly. I mean, one of the big insights, and it sounds so simple, but I was really surprised that when I spoke to somebody from the Kurdish Syrian human rights movement and asked them, what is your hope, what might come out of that? The final word was solidarity. We need more solidarity, people have to see what happens. But the same answer was true for the activists in the favelas in Brazil, and the same answer was true for so many people. So it feels like it is a moment of time where people think big thoughts, and that was interesting to see that unfiltered. Yes, exactly that happens.
Yeah. For me, one of the values, besides this kind of it's a sort of unfiltered evolution of ideas and conversations, is really just purely to have an archive of the moment, a kind of bearing witness, because it's kind of pure bearing witness at this point, because we don't know what's going to happen next. We're in the middle. And so this is like maybe in a year, maybe 10 years, we'll be really these documents that we have, these videos and all of this stuff it's a valuable thing.
Absolutely. So I think that's exactly the philosophy we have with the YouTube channel, to make exactly all these videos and confessions in the booth approachable for everybody to look at it, watch it, think about it. It's more like a heap of ideas, and people are invited to jump into it and
have fun.
Have fun, exactly. And at the same time, I think it's quite interesting that apart from this fluidity and in the moment, artists were able to create something quite tangible from Blessless from Hamburg.
Beautiful work,
with her shrine of things she found here that somehow talked to her about the situation, and pictures, Simon's video work from Hamburg as well, which is amazing and beautiful. So a lot of tangible work came out of that, and reflects the fact that so much creativity bloomed within confinement. People were happy to do that.
Something happened?
Okay, just for... Okay.
I'd love to clap.
At the beginning we had conversations, obviously, when we came together, and I think these first brainstorming ideas were really kind of carrying through the entire weeks of that CoArt in Mener. We were really thinking about these major topics kind of colliding. We have the corona epidemic, we have the global warming issue, we have the issue of racial discrimination, and these major forces in 2020 which come together as a kind of a storm, and it really feels like being on a sea where a storm is raising. The waves are still, the ocean is still flat.
Something is happening, yes.
But you know that these major forces are somehow eventually coming together. So it's in this quietness before the storm.
It's also strange, I think, to be in a place like this, right, which is sort of incredibly beautiful and sort of luxurious. And I'm sure for you who are doing these interviews with these people in these other places and other much more desperate situations, to have this sort of space here, knowing all this stuff is going on out there and is coming, there is kind of an interesting cognitive dissonance to it.
Absolutely. And at the same time, I mean, one could ask why didn't we do that, for example, in Hamburg, because most of the artists came from Hamburg and things like that. Exactly, being in this enormously wonderful house and space and place on Earth gave us a possibility to distance ourselves a little bit from everyday life and try to have that little stop and think, what's happening? What's happening?
I mean, I think that's a residency. That's kind of one of the keys of a residency, is to be outside of your space. Than the normal run-of-the-mill day, and you go to this other space where you can have the kind of freedom to allow yourself to. Also, what we said earlier, I think at the beginning when we were talking, like the freedom to mess up. This could even fail, and that's okay too, because that's what this is. That's part of the project. That's part of the experiment. You have to be allowed all those freedoms.
But I mean, exactly with that question, I am absolutely overwhelmed from the richness of results we got, ideas and feedback. I have not been through everything. I don't know how high quality it is or not, but it is so rich, and that is for me the number one thing. To see also that so many people think in the same lines. So that was wonderful as well. So there's a huge diversity, but at the same time,
there's some paths that are pretty clear.
Absolutely, yeah. So the question, possibly at the end of this little run we're doing here, is what do we take out of the whole experience?
Someone else go first.
Little start. What I'm taking out is really that collaboration after confinement is even more beautiful and desperately needed, and needs to really be reactivated. I think we are right now witnessing a crash of many cultural facets of our society, and it was a really good reminder that is absolutely crucial and needs to continue. And in that sense, I really hope that we will continue this somehow, that we will continue these conversations, these interviews, reach out to people, come together again, maybe as Corona is not over yet, maybe never will be over, but it seems like there's a possibility that we have a pause here, a mark in history which will stay with us for a while. So take that idea and think about it more.
Yeah, I would say for me, one of the things that's been just a great joy for me is collaborating with you, both of you, and finding a different way, a different kind of model for the house here. And as you brought up, sort of being reassured that the residency still serves a purpose. There's still a reason to have something like this.
And to bring these points together, I think it was really one of the big learnings for me that if there is a second confinement, a second wave where we have to stay at home, we have to find quicker, better ways how to get creative processes, the discourse going and discuss things and get out of this petrified anxiety state we were in the first wave and the first confinement, because obviously it is so important to do that.
I think so too. It's really that is very debilitating. That fear is really debilitating and could make us go backwards. We need to figure out a way to use the moment and not be afraid. And somehow, I mean, I sort of felt like when you were talking about the Iraqi woman in Syria, there's other, this sort of bigger vision of other problems and greater problems, and how we need to just, I don't know, keep our eyes out looking instead of in looking too much, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So that's also one of the big things. There's a tendency when we are in confinement, of course, the biggest fear is here. But what you just say, solidarity, to not forget these people that are at war at the moment, that are starving, that are in refugee, and so to open up the perspective again and to see, okay, there is still a world suffering, and we just have to stay at home. Come on.
I would say to all artist residence programs, guys, this is working. You should do it. For the next confinement, it's really, you can come together in a safe way. You keep the group small. You keep talking about it. You're processing and working through it, and you get a better understanding of where we are, and reflect on yourself and document it, and you unleash a tons of creativity.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And at that point, we have to say thank you to the Nancy B. Negley Foundation. That's possible that we can be here, stay here, do that. I'm very thankful to the Ministry of Culture in Hamburg and the Alfred Töpfer Stiftung in Hamburg as well, because we all three came together to make this possible, and very spontaneously as well, which is usually not normal. So that was really making the whole thing work out as it did. So yeah, I'm looking forward to further conversations with you two and with all the artists and more people.
Yes, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Lovely, good.